Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Audit and Risk meeting on the 14th of June. Firstly, can I welcome everybody? Sammy is going to read out some house rules.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to all those attending the Audit and Risk Committee this morning and to those who are watching this meeting live via our YouTube channel. To those who are present with us this morning, I would like to just run through some brief housekeeping rules with you. Please could we ask you to use hand sanitizer when entering and exiting the room this morning? And you will find sanitisers located within the room should you require to use this during the meeting. We ask that face coverings are worn when moving around the room and are only removed when you are seated or standing to talk on an item. Please also remember to follow the social distancing guidelines in place. We are operating a one-way system in the room this morning, and you will see signs on the doors to assist you. We are not expecting any test fire drills this morning, so if you should hear a fire alarm, please make your way out of the room and down the stairs, where officers will assist you to the evacuation location. This is across the road outside of the Star Hotel. Anybody requiring help in the event of an evacuation, please make yourself known and the relevant assistance will be provided. Please can I ask that all mobile phones are either switched off or put onto silent mode. Members, I will remind you, should you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for myself or the chairman to acknowledge you, and your name will be added to those wishing to speak. When called to speak, you will be required to press the button on your microphone in front of you, which will turn red when active. Please could we ask that you speak both loudly and clearly into the microphone so those watching live can hear you. When voting this morning, members, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. Chairman, just to confirm, present in the room this morning, we have yourself, Councillor Flaxman-Taylor, Councillor Freeman, Councillor Gayler, Councillor Wainwright and Councillor Tony Wright. We have officers Karen Sly, Faye Hayward, Lorna Snow, Kay Bate and myself, Sammy Wintle, and we have 2 officers dialing in via Teams. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 1 on your agenda is the apologies for absence. We don't have any. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Nope. Okay, moving on to item number 3, which is the minutes from the last meeting, which is on pages 4 to 7 of your agenda. We'll just go through the pages for accuracy. Pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. Any questions from the minutes? No, thank you. Confirm those minutes. Moving on to item number 4 of the agenda, which is the update on the status of the 1920 accounts, the audit and timetable for the 2021 accounts. This will be a verbal update from the Great Yarmouth Borough Council Finance Officer and the external auditors, EY Associate Partners, which are dialing in virtually today. Thank you. I think so.
Hi, Debbie Hanson here from EY. I was assuming Karen was going to say something first.
Good morning. Yes, I can do. Thanks, Debbie. So the reason for having this item on the agenda today was just to update the Audit and Risk Committee on the progress on the 1920 audit of the Statement of Accounts for the Council and also for the timescales for the 2021 audit. So just kind of starting with the most recent, the 2021, the deadline for the draft publication of those accounts is the 31st of July, and as officers we are on target to meet that deadline, so they will be published next month. The timescales for the audit are yet to be agreed, but they will be later in this year. We also felt it would be useful for the committee to provide an update on the status of the 1920 audit. See, these are the accounts for the year ended March 2020. That audit is underway and is I'm hoping that Debbie will agree with me when I say it's nearing completion. There are a number of outstanding actions areas still to complete, but we are hopeful that we will be able to bring those to the committee in September. We're yet to agree a final date for the 2021 accounts to come in front of the Audit and Risk Committee. Hopefully, Debbie will be able to provide more information on that. I think we sort of would acknowledge that there has been significant delays on the audit of both of the 1920 accounts, largely sort of partly in relation to the way that we've been operating over the last 12 months and some of the delays in terms of the information between ourselves and the auditors. I'm happy to hand over to Debbie now to add to that.
Thank you, Karen. So yeah, I think that's a fair reflection. The audit actually started, I think, in October 2020 was when we initially started this audit. We've had, I think, a number of phases of coming back. So we then restarted the audit in January, February 21, and we are still working on the audit at the moment. The key areas that are outstanding is some valuation information that we need to provide to our internal valuers that we use at EY, and there's a potential error there that we potentially have identified in terms of duplication of accounting for one particular asset. However, until we get the information back that we've requested in relation to that asset, we're not able to confirm whether that will require an amendment or not, and if so, whether that amendment will also impact on prior years. So that probably is the key thing that really needs to be concluded. We also need to complete our going concern assessment. We do that really at the point that we're close to issuing the opinion, because that needs to look forward 12 months from the date of our audit report. So we'll be looking to complete that as soon as we can, but obviously we need to consider the fact that if we're issuing the opinion in September, that assessment will need to go forwards to the end of September 2022. I think we've also got a team on site this week that are finishing some final bits around journals. There are some amendments to the accounts, again, amendments in relation to the cash flow statement, some amendments required to the group accounts, and obviously those amendments will need to be worked through and checked by the audit team. So as Karen has said, we're looking to come back to the September committee with our audit results report, and hopefully at that point be in this position to issue the audit report and certificates. I think the delays that Karen has mentioned, we recognise the reason for those, and I think in last year's audit results report we noted the sort of capacity issues within the council in terms of just the capacity within the finance team to prepare the accounts and pull together the responses to audit queries, and I think COVID-19 has impacted further on that in terms of the additional work that's put on officers in relation to particularly dealing with grant distributions, etc. So I think linked to that, we're scheduled at the moment to start the audit in November 2021, for the 2021 audits. Obviously, what we'd want to be doing is having discussions with the council around the capacity to service that audit to make sure that those issues with capacity have been addressed, so that we can get that audit completed in a much shorter time frame than we have this year, because obviously that's not very helpful to either the council, and it also makes the audit quite disjointed, and those issues will also have an impact on the audit fee. Very happy to take any questions or comments on any of those points, but we are, as we said, substantially complete, but a few areas left that could obviously result in amendments to the accounts being required.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? No? That was just an update for members. Right, we'll be moving on to item number 5 now, which is the report on the status of audit recommendations, which is on pages 8 to 18. The report is being read by Faye Hayward. Thank you.
Good morning, members. This is the first report of 4 from internal audit today, and we're leading with the best one, the follow-up of internal audit recommendations. And the period covered here for this report is the 5th of February 21 to the 3rd of June 21. Some of the members will be familiar with the layout of this report, so I won't go into too much detail on the first section, but I think it's very interesting to note the percentage of recommendations overall within each of the historic years that remain outstanding. We do still have a number that need to be resolved at this point in time, and we provide those within the following appendices later on in the report. Appendix 1 does provide you with an overall summary showing each internal audit report and the number of recommendations within the priority areas that are overdue. So you can, the ones shaded in grey on that appendix there mean that all of the recommendations are now complete and that report is signed off. If I take you to Appendix 2, we have had an update since this report was finalised that I just wanted to inform you of. So we've discussed quite a few times the first one, GY 1801, which is on page 14. And that is the variation to the GY Norse contract in relation to health and safety. We have received an update from the head of property and asset management that this will now be revised in terms of a deadline date to the 31st of July 2021. And that is due to the fact that the agreement is currently with MP law and is being amended, but not just in this area, for a number of other reasons, such as the transfer of housing asset back to GYBC. So we're satisfied that we've got a new date there, certainly, in the latest response from management. We're very much hoping that by the next time we report this, it will be completed and we can sign that off. I know this one is one that we've discussed quite a few times. There is one further update for you. If I take you down to Appendix 4 on page 17, the first one there, GY 2001, the programme of KPI spot checks, I have actually received evidence to show that that one can now be signed off, so I'm pleased to report that to the committee today. So that one will be removed for the following reports that we present to you. At this point, I think it's quite typical for me to hand over to members to ask any questions that they may have about the contents from management included within the appendices. So over to you.
Any questions? Nope, I can't see anything, Faye. Just around the health and safety one, which has been discussed for a long time. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one and hoping that does come through on the 31st of July. But thanks for that one.
You're welcome.
Members, this report is just to inform the members. So we're moving on to item number 6, which is the Head of Internal Audit Annual Report and Opinion for 2020-21, which is on pages 19 to 35, and that also is with Faye.
Hello again, thank you, Chair. So this report summarises all of the work that we carried out for 2021 from the internal audit team and gives you an overview of what we feel the governance, risk management and control framework looks like at Great Yarmouth Borough Council. Now clearly this year we've had a very significant risk to factor into our opinion, COVID-19. And you may remember last year us bringing a revised plan back to you to discuss. We needed to amend the coverage to ensure that we were giving COVID enough days and to be able to summarise the Council's approach to that in pulling this opinion together. So if I just take you through some of the key points of this report, because I'm conscious that we do have some new members and we only deal with this one once a year. We have an introduction on page 22, which I don't think needs to be outlined any more clearly than it is. However, if you move to 2.2, the opinion itself on page 23, you'll see the kind of considerations that we thought about in pulling this document together. So we comment there that, first of all, Great Yarmouth Borough Council has a reasonable governance, risk management and control framework overall for 2021. This is a positive grading. It's fabulous considering everything that the council has had to deal with that we've managed to get to this point. So you can certainly see that as very positive. Of the 6 assurance reports that we've completed within the year, all 6 have received a positive assurance grading, either reasonable or substantial. Again, a very positive point to note. We've also supplemented our assurance work with 3 position statements, and they were in areas of procurement and contract management, coronavirus response and recovery, and housing needs. We're working through the recommendations or the actions of those pieces of work with management currently, but we have provided a little update in the progress report to talk through those. Now, the next statement is quite important in that it says, in none of the areas reviewed as part of the revised internal audit plan did the findings indicate that the COVID-19 pandemic had severely impacted the council's ability to deliver its core services to its residents. There is a small exception there in relation to environmental services. However, we are comforted that work is getting back up to speed now that things have calmed down a little. We also highlight here that we have not provided assurance over the business grants issued by the council. We have some time in the 2021-22 plan to go over that, so you'll be receiving assurance on that in the next year. We do here refer to the fact that we do continue to have historical outstanding internal audit recommendations from limited assurance reports. So for that point, specifically, we do recommend that those are referenced within the annual governance statement of the council for 2021 until such time that they are resolved. And as we've discussed in the previous item, we're hoping that that long-standing GY recommendation is going to be completed for the 31st of July. So positive direction of travel, hopefully. Okay, so this opinion has been discussed with management team and section 151 officer prior to publication. So at section 3, you'll see the revisions that we made to the plan. We split it into 5 themes. We looked at what we were trying to carry out initially when it was approved in February, I think, 2020. And I think it's fair to say that if we'd have continued with that plan of work, there's no way we'd be sitting here today with a conclusion. So we split it down into 5 key themes. We've delivered assurance on those. We've still managed to do some stuff that we originally set out to, but a lot of the work you will see move into 2021-22. And we really are trying to get back up to usual coverage levels going forward. At 3.3, you'll see a summary of the internal audit work, again highlighting that all of the assurance reviews carried out resulted in a positive assurance opinion. At 3.4, you'll see the follow-up of management action. Now, we've gone over this a little bit in the previous agenda item, but that just summarises it even more and just shows the number outstanding there. At 3.5, you will see the issues that we recommend adding into the Council's annual governance statement, and it's those historical audit recommendations that we're referencing there. And then the section 5, starting on page 26, we talk about the work that we do for the internal and external assessments. Now, this is where we look at our processes in internal audit and compare them against best practice, the public sector internal audit standards, build in any improvement actions if they're identified. But I just thought it was worth highlighting there that there's no significant concerns, and we believe that we are in compliance. We're due an external assessment in 2022. At 5.2 of this report, we highlight the performance overall for 2021 of the contractor and ourselves as in the internal audit team. Now, you will have been aware from receiving our progress reports throughout the year that we have faced delays. We still have one report which is currently in draft. The findings have been shared with the management team, but we've not managed to finalise that. It has been a completely unprecedented year with staff sickness and issues in obtaining information from officers. Clearly, they had some very urgent tasks to work through this year. I think it would be a good idea for us, in order to not repeat this, to sit down with the contractor in Q1. I'm holding a meeting with them next week to discuss the issues that we have faced and look to get to the bottom of those, look at a root cause analysis and build in some improvement actions going forward. So I wanted to assure you that I'm very much hoping we won't continue to have these issues going forward into the following year. If I take you to page 29, this just gives you an overview of the effectiveness of the head of internal audit arrangements measured against the SIPFA role. We've self-assessed ourselves against that, and again, we feel we're in compliance. Now, the appendices, Appendix 1, you'll see the overall work that we've carried out, the number of recommendations that are overdue or not yet due. So that's just a bit more of a graphical representation of our work to date on page 30. And then on the following pages, in summarising the report, we've got an assurance chart, and that gives you an idea of the gradings that we've given in each of the areas that we audit over a number of years. and we've added 2021 in there. So I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have following that whistle-stop tour of our annual opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. You have a question from Councillor Tony Wright.
Just a very quick one for clarification. In terms of the opinion where it says that we're reasonable, and we saw the assurance chart there where we've got a lot of yellow there, which is reasonable, a few substantial green, and then we've got limited in orange. Are they the three categories, or are there, I mean, obviously substantial is the best one to be in. But that seems to be very, very limited in terms of the numbers. I mean, is that clearly down to the, I mean, it can't be down to the coronavirus because, I mean, it goes back to 2016-17. But is that a generalisation in terms of where local authorities should be in this? Or, I mean, or how do we achieve the substantial all the way through the report?
It's a very good question, thank you. So you'll see certainly that there are an increasing number of substantial assurance gradings there across the years at Great Yarmouth, and they are, as I said, increasing in the fundamental financial systems, certainly. Where we've got limited, we try to target following internal audit reviews to actually show that things have improved as well, so you should see less of those. We have 4 gradings. We've got substantial, reasonable, limited, and then no assurance. So hopefully you're comforted by the fact that we don't have any red no assurances in this table. Certainly substantial internal auditors aren't keen on giving that grading because, as you say, it does represent the absolute best. It means we've literally found hardly anything that we can do. So we feel when we're looking at that, if you obtain that grading, then it really is a positive. Reasonable is very typical for a number of areas that we look at, and it just means that we've found some good practice points that we need to bring the council along and really doing our job in identifying those. But I'm comforted by this table overall. I think the number of limiteds there, it isn't a lot when you look at the overall framework. But we hope to continue to see that improve and more greens as we go forward.
Any other questions? No. As you'll see from your agenda on page 20, the recommendations are that the committee receive and note the 4 bullet points. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, which is the strategic and annual internal audit plans for 2021-2022, which is on pages 36 to 62. This report is also read by Faye. Thank you.
Hello again. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the Strategic and Annual Internal Audit Plan report normally comes to the committee in March. Now we requested from the chair that we actually put that back to July to give us, or June, sorry, to give us time to finalise the last year's work from 2021, so that we could use that to ascertain where we would need to review for the following year and really look at the whole picture. If there was lots of work still outstanding, I think it would make this task a little more difficult. So this is another report that you receive once a year, so I'll take you through some of the key components of that. The first page just outlines why we carry out this piece of work and why we need to pull the plan together ahead of completing the work. And that's on page 39, onwards. At 2, the audit charter. This is a document that we provide to you every other year for approval, and it's quite lengthy, so I'll forgive you if you've not digested all of the contents of it. However, it just highlights our authority, responsibility, and our purpose of carrying out the internal audit review and the internal audit plan. It essentially says why we're here, what authority we have to carry out this work, and goes into a little bit of detail about how we manage our processes and how we assure that quality is at the forefront of the work that we do, and also that independence is there too. The audit strategy is a similar document, but we provide that to you annually. So there's no significant changes to either of those documents that I need to highlight at this point in time. So you can kind of read them as is, and the audit strategy itself just, again, gives a flavour for how we carry out the internal audit service and how we develop our plans and the service in accordance with the Charter and the public sector internal audit standards. So the main part of this report, I feel, and the most important, is the strategic internal audit plan and the annual internal audit plan. So it's necessary, as I said, to consider COVID and the results of last year when pulling this plan together. We also deferred a number of audits from the previous year to provide coverage of COVID-19. So we've added those back in if they're appropriate. What we have done in pulling this together is review the strategic risk register for Great Yarmouth. You will see from later on in the agenda, there's lots of areas that are high, very high, and what we're trying to do and aiming to do is provide you, the members, with comfort over those processes and those scores and the mitigating actions to tell you that those are on track and that those risks will be mitigated. So that's the purpose of pulling this plan together for you. We've got 228 days over 20 internal audit reviews for 21-22, and that also covers 3 IT processes within that. At 5.3 on page 41, we talk about the reviews that we would like to carry out across the consortium. Great Yarmouth has their internal audit service delivered by the Eastern Internal Audit Services Consortium, which a number of other councils are a member of. So we're going to do this piece of work across all of the councils that we work with to enable us to compare and contrast and bring out good practice points where relevant. This year we've got business strategy and performance management. As you'll note from the report, it says in response to COVID, we need to look to see how those corporate plans have shifted and changed in response to the pandemic. We also have counter fraud and corruption. So there's a lot of information out there at the moment about the new fraud risk. It's not new, but it has increased due to the fact that COVID has happened. So we'll be adding some days in there to tackle that and look at that. We've got some good practice out there at the moment that we can look at and compare Great Yarmouth's approach to. And then lastly there on that list, we've got the annual governance statement. So we're looking at the Delivering Good Governance in Local Government Framework guide and comparing Great Yarmouth's approach to that, building in any recommendations if we find that improvements need to be made. So I don't propose, as I said, to go through the charter because it's very lengthy unless you had any specific questions on that. And again, in line with the strategy, a similar approach. I think there may be some questions asked, hopefully, around the strategic plan at Appendix 3, starting on page 54, and then the annual plan, which starts on page 58. So I'm happy to hand over to you guys at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Do you have any questions for Faye? No. No. So the recommendations are on page 37, point 6.1. The Audit and Risk Committee notes and approves A, the internal audit charter, B, the internal audit strategy, B, the strategic internal audit plans 2021-22 to 2024-25, and C, the annual internal audit plan 2021-22. All agree, yes? Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, which is the progress report on internal audit activity, which is on pages 63 to 80, and that report is being read by Faye. Thank you.
Hello again. Final one, I think. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is the progress report, and we've kind of gone over a little bit of the detail already for the annual opinion. But any reports that we've been able to finalise within this period, we've included the executive summaries of those at Appendix 2 for you to read through and ask any questions about the specific findings raised. We also go into a little bit of detail about the performance of the contractor in this quarter as well, which, as I've already outlined, hasn't been in line with our boundaries of performance, but we're due to take action on that. We have completed the plan, thankfully. 100% of the work has been allocated and delivered. As I mentioned earlier, we do have one area which is currently in draft. This is for key controls. A reasonable assurance grading has been given. We will discuss those findings further and build in action points with management. However, I don't anticipate the grading overall changing substantially. I think what may occur through discussion is either that evidence is provided or actually some of those recommendations are already complete. The finance team are very good at jumping on any of the issues that we find and resolving those quickly. But in any case, we have provided those for you to have a look at. Just want to draw your attention to 4.4, which really kind of summarises this report on page 67. You've got there that we carried out an accounts payable review and that a substantial assurance grading was given with only one needs attention recommendation raised, which is a really good result. And remote access there, substantial no recommendations highlighted at all. We did identify 3 suggested improvement points, but they really are for management to decide whether they take forward or not. And lastly there, the GY 2107 key controls draft report that we've discussed was given a reasonable assurance grading with 5 important and 5 needs attention recommendations raised. We go into a little bit of detail at 4.6 in relation to the position statements that we've carried out in procurement, coronavirus and housing needs. No hugely significant recommendations or points for me to highlight at this point in time. So if I take you to Appendix 1, you'll see the completed plan overall on page 69. That gives a graphic for the work that we've carried out for 2020-21. And then, as I said, at Appendix 2, we've got the executive summaries of those reports that we've been able to finalise in the period. So this is usually where the questions are generated, so please go ahead and ask them if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Any questions from any members? No? So the recommendations are on page 63 of your report. The committee are asked to note the outcome of the audits completed during the period and the progress to date. Thank you. Moving on to item 9 of your agendas, which is the annual report on risk management arrangements 2020 to 2021, which is on pages 81 to 101. This report is going to be read by Kay Bate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the risk report identifies the work that's been undertaken during the year to ensure compliance with the risk management framework. The report also shows the various mechanisms that we are in place from a corporate and a service level to ensure that risk is identified, recorded, monitored and reported, and control measures are put in place to ensure that risk is reduced to an acceptable level. This can be through risk registers, risk assessments, policies and trainings, etc. Page 96 of the agenda provides a progress update of the action plan that was reduced last year. Any actions that are not completed will be put onto this year's action plan. And also page 97 of the agenda report also provides a summary of the work that's actually been undertaken during the year. Obviously, you'll notice that some of the work has not been actually undertaken, which is mainly obviously due to COVID-19 pandemic. However, there has obviously been various work that's been undertaken by teams to obviously ensure that risk is mitigated against for staff, members and volunteers in the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Page 99 of the report also provides this year's action plan, and progress will be monitored and reported to the corporate risk group. Hopefully the report obviously demonstrates that there is a good risk management culture within the authority and will support the information that's contained in the annual governance statement. Obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Any questions from anybody? No. So the recommendations is on page 81, that the committee note and approve the annual report on the council's risk management arrangements. Are we all in favour? Yes? Lovely, thank you. Moving on to item number 10, which is the corporate risk register, which is on pages 102 to 111. This report is also read by Kay. Kay, can I just ask you to move your microphone forward a bit more, please? Thank you.
Is that better?
Just a little bit closer, just... Yep, lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, so the corporate risk register is presented to the Audit and Risk Committee every 6 months and was reviewed by the management team and the corporate risk group on a quarterly basis. Since presenting the register to the Audit and Risk Committee in February 2021, there's been 2 new risks that have added to the register. This is risk 25, which is gaps in the insurance cover, and there's also a confidential risk number 25, which obviously not included in the report. The risk ratings for 4 of the risks have actually reduced due to the implementation of the action plan. This is risk 1, financial stability, risk 2, reduced spending in Great Yarmouth, risk 10B, impact of EU exit trade deal, and risk 23, COVID-19 impact and response and recovery actions. The risk ratings for 5 of the risks have actually increased. This is predominantly because of the COVID-19 pandemic and supply issues. This is risk number 9, which is event management, number 11, which is management of major projects, 12A, reliance of key individuals and capacity as a team, 12B, resilience and capacity of team, and 18A, sufficient resources and resilience to ensure effective procurement for the borough. All the 25 risks that are included on the register actually have an action plan in place to try and mitigate or reduce that risk to the authority. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I have a question from Councillor Tony Wright.
Yeah, just raises in the training session. What concerns me over this, obviously the number that are in very high, and obviously it's mainly down to the COVID response. But clearly what we have is a situation, for instance, where we've got a lot of projects coming on and the management of them is causing problems. Obviously, and I know things are in place for that. But on the other side of the coin, we also have the finances, which are going to become very precarious in terms of reserves, etc., very high. But in order to combat one, in terms of project management and other service deliveries, it's going to incur more costs. So will one actually increase the problems that we have in terms of the financial stability of the council, including reserves, and put us in a very precarious position there? In other words, are we overstepping the mark in terms of some of the things that we're trying to do in respect of the amount of resources that we have, and will we have to go cap in hand to the government to try to fill some of these gaps?
I mean, obviously, I know that within the project team, there's obviously has been a recruitment drive within that team. So obviously, we can obviously make sure that we do monitor those projects and ensure that we obviously comply with the terms and conditions. And obviously, you know, it's about obviously ensuring that we meet those requirements. In terms of the government funding, I don't know if Karen's...
I'm happy to add to that. Kay's absolutely right in terms of the resources for the project team. We've recently increased capacity within that team. In terms of looking at our business as usual as well as the projects, obviously members are aware there's significant investment that's coming into the borough through future high streets and town deals, and we absolutely need to make sure that we have the capacity to deliver against those programmes. So we are looking at, as a management team, looking at the resourcing. We've already partway through resourcing where we feel there are potential gaps in there to make sure that we can absolutely deliver against these as well as business as usual.
Just very briefly to come back on that. So the long and the short of it is that with the projects that are coming up which need the management, it won't impact severely on our finance because some of that money will probably come from the projects. So in terms of the services, I mean, there are obviously concerns that, you know, we have been extremely stretched for obvious reasons. Do we see a positive impact coming in the next 12 months? So in other words, 12 months from now, will we see more of these in the medium rather than high? Is that what the prediction is going to be?
Yes, I would say so. At a point in time, obviously, this was the risk register does continue to be under regular review. As management team, we do continue to look at those resources and that capacity. You're absolutely right in terms of that funding coming in. We are able to, we will need to charge some of that capacity to those be it project managers, etc., to those projects to ensure that we can deliver against those in the timescale.
Thank you. Any other members have any questions?
Well, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I mean, obviously, we've recently recruited the new director for major projects and whatever his title is, but I was involved in those interviews and he seems very, very capable. He's got a really good track record, so hopefully when he starts within the next few months, a lot of this will be sort of pulled together and we'll probably get a lot more information than we may have had in the past, but I'm pretty confident that he will make a real big impact for the organisation.
Thank you. Any other questions from any members? No. So the recommendations are on page 102, that the committee review the corporate risk register and that the committee approve the revised layout of the corporate risk register. All approve, yes? Thank you. Right, moving on to item number 11, which is the Code of Corporate Governance, which is on pages 112 to 141. That's also with Kay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Code of Corporate Governance is a set of principles and sub-principles that we use to monitor good governance, risk management and systems of internal control. Against each principle, it shows what systems, processes, procedures and policies that are in place to demonstrate compliance. This shows the Council can demonstrate a high degree of compliance, however there is room for development. Where further work has been identified, this will be recorded and implementation dates given. The Code of Corporate Governance is reviewed every year, and on a 6-monthly basis, a progress update is requested where further work has been identified, and the progress update is monitored and reported to the Corporate Risk Group. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from any members? No. So the recommendations are on page 112, and the committee are asked to approve the updated Code of Corporate Governance. All in favour, yes? Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, which is the annual governance statement for 2020-2021, which is on pages 142 to 162. It's also read by Kay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Code of Corporate Governance requires that an annual governance statement is prepared and published each year with a statement of accounts. The AGS identifies the systems, processes and procedures that are in place to demonstrate good governance, risk management and systems internal control. From page 146 to 154 of the agenda, this summarises the information that are contained in the Code of Corporate Governance. And from page 156 onwards, this is updated information contained from the Head of Internal Audit report. I've obviously, since producing this report, obviously Faye's actually provided a copy of her report, so I've now actually updated that with the information that's contained in Faye's report. The AGS will also include areas where further work is required to enhance and strengthen the governance and risk management arrangements in place, which have been identified through the work by the internal auditors, external auditors, the self-assessment assurance statements that were completed by management team and the Audit and Risk Committee. On page 158 shows the action plan that was produced last year for areas where improvements were required, along with a progress update to address these areas. Some actions have been implemented, however, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this has had the impact of the delivery of some of the other action points. On page 160 shows this year's action plan. I have also included a further action point which was obviously brought out in Faye's report, and obviously that's in connection with the implementation of the recommendations contained in the Corporate Health and Safety report. A progress update will be provided to the Audit and Risk Committee in 6 months' time regarding how we're actually progressing with that action plan. So obviously, overall, you can obviously identify that the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on the financial operation performance and the workforce of the Council. However, work has been undertaken to review or create policies, processes and procedures to ensure that Council could continue to deliver services while ensuring the health and safety of staff, members, volunteers and the community, and also to ensure that there's a good risk management and systems in place. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Kay? No. No. So the recommendations are on page 142, that the committee consider and approve the 2020-2021 annual governance statement. All approve, yes? Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, which is the work programme, which is on pages 163 to 164. Any questions around the work programme? No. Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, which is any other business. No, I don't have any other business. Thank you. Moving on to item number 15, which is the exclusion of the public. We will just await for the live streamer to stop filming. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I just need you to read the paragraph before we stop the live stream on the agenda, if you see it's on the agenda. Please. Just need committee to approve that.
So, item number 15, exclusion of the public. That under section 100 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involved the likely disclosure of an exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12 of the said Act.